Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Benchmade Proper, but more specifically, this is the Benchmade 318-2 in S90V and Carbon Fiber. One thing to note, I'm going to say proxy at some point in time during the course of this review. This is the Proper. But my brain is stuck on proxy, so welcome to my world. Anyways, first off, in the name of full disclosure, now that I've disclosed I'm not a brilliant man, I'll talk about this guy. This guy was actually sent to me directly by Benchmade Knife Company. We talked at Blade Show. I said, oh, that's nice. They said, yeah, you want to check one out? I said, yes, I do. But I told them, as always, and I sent them the full, disclaimer you can see on my website. I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. It might be a gem, it might be junk. They did still send it along. But we have to assume this is the best quality controlled one of these guys ever. And we have to assume that I'm doing my best not to let this affect the quality of my review. Next thing, size comparison. Here it is against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Delica. See, we can see here, this is a pretty small knife. The Proper is, generally speaking, not that huge. But in terms of sharpened blade length, we're right in the same vicinity as the Delica. Here it is against the Ontario Rat number 1. And then I'll compare it to a couple of other slip joint style knives, although this isn't actually a slip joint, it's a traditional. This is the Great Eastern Cutlery 99 pattern. Here it is against the Spyderco Rhodey, which is a modern slip joint. So you can see it is bigger than the Rhodey. Then here it is against one of my personal favorite modern slip joints. That's the JE Made, just JE Made, I guess. I'm sure there's a model, but I'm not sure I know it. Either way, these are both very modern style slip joints here. So there you go. Next thing, this is in some ways a follow-up review, although I really do think that the S90V and Carbon Fiber one really brings enough different at the table. I'm just going to consider it to be sort of a new product, but the thing is, I have my original review of the Proper, and, in many ways I agree with it, and there will be some shared points here. And then finally, like I said, or actually, I didn't say this, there is an aftermarket edge put on this guy. I got this guy, and I actually decided, you know what, I want to see what S90V, let's see how their S90V is. And so I actually put a new edge on it. I did a freehand edge on it and whatnot. It turned out really well, but nevertheless, don't blame them for this edge. So let's talk about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this very interesting little slip joint right here. So on the good side, this guy is made in the States. That's always a joy, at least for me. I'm rooting for my own home team, so to speak, as I'm sure you are for yours. And quality is about effort, not geography, but it's always a nice thing to see that here. Next thing, this slip joint here. It is a slip joint. That means it is a non-locking knife. That is a beautiful thing for some people, especially if you live in an area where laws dictate that you can't carry a locking knife, right? So that makes this guy great for a bunch of people in a bunch of areas, and especially places around the world where some of the other stuff I talk about may not be a possibility. Next thing, this is a different blade shape than the original one I reviewed. This is not the is it one cliffy, sheep's cliffy, whatever it is. It's not that. This is a clip point blade. It's kind of a weird looking clip point blade. I mean, this is maybe a more traditional clip point, but nevertheless, it is definitely a clippy sort of point, and I like it, and it gives it maybe a little bit more style. I requested this guy because, I don't know, looking at this relative to the original one, I like this a little bit better. So there you go. Next thing, this guy actually has some serious, because of the carbon fiber, because of the gold, this has some serious props as sort of a classy knife, right? This is a high lunchroom acceptability factor. I feel like you could bust this out in the boardroom, to open up an envelope or cut a thread off your suit or something, and people probably wouldn't bat an eye. I think that's a very nice element to this. The original Proper is pretty good in that domain, but this guy is exceptionally classy, and that's because it frankly looks amazing, and that's the next good thing. I mean, the carbon fiber on this is good, and you can see here it's real carbon fiber, and it's got some contouring to it, as well as some really loud freaking seagulls. Guys, we know you want to get, well, we're not going to talk about what they're trying to get, but nevertheless, go find another parking lot, please. Sorry. They don't care. It's got nice carbon fiber on it, though. It's got these nice gold liners in here. You can see here, that adds a very nice little accent. Throughout, you've got this gold, and they're not actually gold, by the way. They're gold anodized titanium, but still, they look really nice. And then you've got the black hardware on this, and that just makes this guy overall a very classy-looking knife. It just looks great. Then, and so all of those things together make this guy actually a pretty compelling piece. You've got all the other little convenience features like lanyard holes and whatnot, but nevertheless, I think it's a really nice little piece, and so that, to me, is the good, is that it looks really, really nice. It's a serious gentle person sort of folder. I do like the clip point a little bit better than this guy. It is a slip joint, which gives people a lot of legal options there, and it is made in the US of A, which is always a beautiful thing. On the great side, to me, the blade is great. I like this blade a lot. It is S90V, and S90V is a good steel. It is absolutely solid, good to go. It works beautifully. And in fact, I would argue this is, and it comes to a relatively thin edge. I mean, given it, that there were other traditionals out there which are a little bit thinner. I can, show this GEC off for instance, and this is, this is definitely thicker in the edge, but nevertheless, it cuts very nicely. It took a very nice edge. And honestly, in sharpening it, it felt just like what I wanted to. It felt relatively hard. It felt like a really nice S90V. That's kind of an amorphous thing, but ever since I've sharpened it, I've had absolutely no question with cutting and whatnot. It's good to go. And so, to me at least, what I like most about this guy is that blade. It is a relatively thin blade with a relatively thin edge, an S90V, that just, oh man, that blade's good to go. So, to me at least, that's great. It could be the looks of it, but I went with blade because knives should cut, right? On the bad side, to start with, they didn't send this guy with a pocket clip or any variety of thing like, or I'm sorry, not pocket clip, a pocket slip. I mean, clip could be cool too, right? But no, a pocket slip. Like a little piece of leather or something like that you can slide the knife into. I think that's a little detail, and maybe I'm asking a little much, but the thing is, at this price, they need to be doing some extra mile stuff, and I think that would be a nice extra mile stuff for this. Next thing, they could do a little thinner behind the edge. Speaking of the extra mile, this is definitely not as thin behind the edge as a lot of traditional knives, so I'd like to see them improve there. Next thing, there are some unfortunate gaps in the back here. If we take a look at the edge of here, I'll close the knife so we can get a little bit closer detail. You can see here that it's relatively flush along the side here, but then if we come back here, we can see there's a little bit of rounding off right there. There's a little rounding off here, a little bit of rounding off there, and even right up in the front here, that's getting to be a little, so, the back space of fit here isn't perfect. The back spring fit, that is. Well, spring space is the same thing in this case. So I'm not a huge fan of that. That's kind of the only fit and finish foul that I've got here on this guy. Next thing, the price on this guy is pretty serious. It's $205. That's a lot of freaking money. And in fact, it's a lot of money relative to the competition. This is above everything that J.E. Made Knives makes. I've got another one of his right here. He's like I said, J.E. Made is a Chinese company, but they're very, very good at making modernized traditional sorts of knives. And yeah, this is definitely, this is way up there. It's above Lion Steel's entire modern traditional lineup, even the ones in carbon fiber at M390. So, this is just way up there. There are really not a lot of knives in the traditional market that are this high outside of the fancier collectible or custom sorts of things. The price on this is very, very high. And then finally on the bad side, and something that I think for many people would actually be the ugly, is that the action just isn't all that great relative to a lot of your modern traditionals. This guy, what I mean by action is that, a good traditional, in a lot of ways, one of the things you look for is sort of a very strong half stop that stops the blade right there, and then a very smooth motion to full deployment. And then when you press up on the blade, it should kind of pop back into position there, or come to that half stop point, which is a safety feature there. And this, to an extent, has that. It does have a half stop, but it's a very mushy half stop, and it's very easy to kind of move around from that half stop. And then it's not all that smooth as you're putting it back. There's almost like a 3/4 stop in the middle there. And then you come to the final deployed version. And then to actually close it, the spring isn't all that hard. I mean, it doesn't close that crazy easy on it, but it's a very, very soft spring in the back there. And in fact, if I put a little bit of pressure on it, it's actually more likely that it won't return back home, which again gets to that weird like 3/4 stop area. I'm not super impressed by the action. And generally speaking, the spring on the back isn't all that strong, and so I don't know. From a traditional standpoint, I'm not really I'm not really in love with that action there. I think Benchmade could really use to work on tuning that a little bit and getting closer to some of the traditional knives that this is in many ways emulating. So, to me at least, what's bad is that the action isn't great, at least relative to a lot of modern traditional, or frankly, a lot of traditional knives. The price on it is very, very high. There are lots of those little tiny, well, not lots, but there are a couple of little gaps in the back here that I'm not super impressed by. They could go a little thinner behind the edge, and at this kind of a price point, I'd like to see a pocket slip or something in there. On the ugly front, there's nothing really ugly. The one thing I'll say is that for a lot of people, that action will be ugly. I'm not such a dyed-in-the-wool traditionalist sort of guy, a traditionalist sort of guy, that, a bad action is just like, oh my God, that's terrible. But I think they really could do a lot better. And for somebody who's really after the kind of really hard snap of some of the good old-fashioned traditionals, this is not going to do that for them. And so the action is probably going to be ugly for some, although I think it's okay for me. Well, it's okay. It's okay enough to be in the bad, but not in the... Anyways, I digress. Let's go to the final conclusion, shall we? And my final conclusion is that despite all the complaining I've just been doing, I think this is the best Proper ever. This is very much a beautiful variant of the Proper. I think it's more aesthetically compelling than the originals. You know, the original red G10 one was fine, but in a lot of ways looked a little toy-like. It wasn't that... And you know, the green micarta, look at it, looks okay, but I don't know, with this clip point here, with the carbon fiber, with the gold liners, this becomes something that is a very nice little object. I like this thing a lot. I like this knife. Just, it's good as an object. It's a cool looking thing. It also has a nicer steel. It's got a bit of a higher end feel to it. Frankly, I like this knife a lot more than I've liked any of the other Propers. This is the best Proper ever, and it's one of the better Benchmades out there right now. But that said, the Proper still feels like a knife that could use a little bit of iteration. I think they still have some things that they could learn from the traditional knife market. You know, the action, they could absolutely improve. If they were to spend some time getting that action crispy, getting that pull strong, getting this guy, I think they would have a runaway hit from some of the traditional folks out there, especially given that they're able to make these in mass quantities. But I think the action could be done better. They could do the blade a little thinner, and frankly, the price is a little non-traditional, so I wouldn't mind seeing that come down a little bit. But look, this in some ways represents one of the things I appreciate most that Benchmade does, and that is the multiple versions of the same production piece, right? Where they'll do the same knife, basically, but with another set of materials, with a different feel, a different look, that kind of thing. Fundamentally, it's the exact same knife, so you know what you're getting, but you get it with maybe a different steel, different color, etc. But the more importantly, this is a regular thing that they do. These are not sprint runs. It's not get them once and you're done, FOMO, you know, fear of missing out marketing. No, it's not a dealer exclusive, which, guys, come on. And it's not a limited edition, thank God. I mean, certainly they'll probably stop making these at some point in time, but they're going to make as many of them as they want to sell. Though that is a beautiful thing. I love the fact so much that Benchmade is willing to take the same model and redo these in a bunch of ways. So I really want to encourage them to do that, especially, you know, given that they're continuing to sell this alongside the existing models. And so I like very much that this knife exists as this edition of the Proper, so to speak, as well as liking the knife generally. So I feel like this is a good knife. Even if it isn't perfect, in fact, I would go so far as to say it is a great little knife. It is going to be a very nice choice for a lot of folks. It's one of the most compelling things Benchmade's making right now. It's an excellent classy carry, and I think for a whole bunch of people, this little knife here, even despite that price, is probably going to be the Proper choice for a slip joint sort of thing. So anyways, there you go. I hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.